Well, I'm going to challenge you guys to answer some questions. I'm going to try and represent the audience here a little bit in terms of understanding what this is all about and some of the work that you've done together, just to shed a little bit of light on what's possible with development. So to start with, Mark, I just want you to maybe give us a sense of who Insure Alert is, as a bit of background, what it is that you do, and perhaps you can tell us a bit about the scenario that led you to work with EBS.
Yeah, sure. So I work for a vehicle recovery company, doing some consultancy work, and we have realised over many years that communication with insurance companies and fleet companies is difficult. The start of last year, we did a lot of work around what it was actually taking us, and it was quite astounding. So we decided that there's got to be a better solution. So we came up with the idea of developing a communication system that will allow recovery companies to speak with insurance companies and fleet companies and hire companies to speed it up. So rather than spending 45 minutes on hold trying to get through to an insurance company, could we do it in a matter of minutes? And that was sort of how it was born, really. Yeah.
And so was there nothing on the market already? Did you have a look and decide that solutions that were there just weren't quite right?
So there actually wasn't anything for recovery companies specifically. There was one other competitor called PADS, owned by a huge American insurance company called Verisk, but it was police-only software, so there was still nothing out there. So, yeah, we kind of had a chat with a few other companies that we knew of, and everybody was experiencing the same problem, so we just thought we'd try and take the bull by the horns.
So that was what, a commercial decision from your perspective to try and fill that gap. Do you have a technical team, a development team, or anything internally? How did you decide, well, you know, how we're going to do this?
So no, we don't. We're very sort of green with it all. We actually sort of came up with the idea, did some research. From that research, decided that it was potentially viable. And we spoke with a couple of software companies, specific software companies, and it was very wishy-washy, which then led me to speaking to EBS to see if they could advise me if they knew of anybody. And it just so happened that they'd got their own team, which we weren't aware of at the time. We'd worked with EBS for many, many years, but we didn't know.
Okay, so you're an existing customer of
Yeah.
EBS. Okay, so you had that relationship already. When you talked about other companies that you spoke to, I mean, one of the things that I sometimes think about when I hear about software developers or how do we get something created is to sort of like look offshore, you know, Eastern Europe or wherever. I'm assuming that would have been an option. What made you choose EBS?
Yeah, so we spoke with, I think it was 2 or 3 other software development companies, so they're online, advertising themselves as bespoke software development companies. I think, yeah, the vast majority, but I think all 3 of them were either India or Eastern Europe. But yeah, it was very sort of wishy-washy. It was sort of, yeah, we can do it for you. We charge per hour. Okay, well, how long is it going to take? Could be weeks. Okay, but what's it going to cost me? We charge by the hour, and it depends on how many people you want. So we couldn't get a good response that would make us feel comfortable with moving forward, which is what led me to speaking with EBS to see if they would sort of recommend somebody. And actually EBS then said, well, this is something that we might be able to help you with in-house. And they came forward with a fantastic sort of plan, a very sort of staged plan, which made us feel much more comfortable with proceeding with them. Okay.
Simon G, maybe, or Simon P, depends. You can choose who you want to answer. How, you know, working with Insure Alert already then, so what were the key questions that you had to find out from Mark and his team?
I think, first of all, we weren't doing our job because he didn't know we did it. So a message to everyone. We do software development from scratch. Plug. I think first of all, the first step was for me to challenge, which might sound an odd way of approaching it, but you'll be surprised how many conversations we'll have, and people say, we want to do, this magical thing, if you like, and expectations are often unrealistic, that I can achieve, what's the term I'm trying to use? I don't know. Amazing things by spending 50 pence. That generally doesn't happen. So first of all, I very much challenged Mark and asked exactly what do you want to achieve, in which you went back and documented that. And we then went through a discussion process of, can we do it, and what that would look like. And initially, let's put some level of budget in, which I think was the biggest challenge that Mark was achieving from anybody else. And it was a loose budget, but it was something to hang your hat on, if you like. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and so just back to you, Mark, was that a more realistic conversation, and were you happier with it not being, cheap as chips and we don't know how much it is? Like, it was possibly a higher, I don't know whether it was a higher price or not, but I'm assuming it was. Was that actually confidence building in itself?
Yeah, so they gave us quite a wide spectrum of budget, so it could be from A to B, and it was quite wide, but it was within our budget that we'd sort of considered building up to this. So it gave us a bit more confidence that it could be done within the budget that we got for the development. So yeah, it made us feel a bit more secure and comfortable with it.
It sounds very collaborative, this process already. I'll take this two answers here. So from your perspective, how collaborative was it? How much did you feel involved, and at what stages? And then maybe Simon, you could touch on, from the EBS side, what was involved there, and maybe some of the challenges that you guys experienced.
Yeah, so one of the things I quite liked about working with EBS is it was very much a team effort. Sort of, I would tell them what I wanted, they would go away and go, okay, this is what we think. Is this right? We'd then come back and go, well, yeah, that bit is, but no, not that bit. We were thinking more like this. And it was a constantly evolving sort of process that just kept everybody in the loop. It was sort of little and often, if you like. So they'd do some small changes, show it us, so that when we got to the end, it wasn't just a case of, oh, right, yeah, no, that was nothing like what we wanted. It was very much, we got to the end, and it was pretty much what we wanted, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was very good in that respect.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, it was very much the approach of, like you say, little and often. So the team, having regular communication with yourselves, taking away the requirements, making sure that we put some thought into it before actually doing any work, and then presenting something. It might be a small amount, it might be a slightly larger amount, but at each stage where we felt there was something to show, it was right, let's get that shown, let's get some feedback, and we were going back changing things based on that feedback. Sometimes the feedback was good, sometimes the feedback was actually, this is what we were thinking, and we'd review that, a very agile approach to it, as opposed to thanks for all the information, we're now going to write you something, deliver it to you, and then you tell us it's not right. So yeah, it was very little and often approach, but I think that worked well.
Whereabouts are you based?
Just down the road in Birmingham.
Just down the road. So was that helpful in terms of, I don't know whether you sort of popped in or people could come along? Is that helpful to work closely with a local provider in that sense?
Yeah, so pretty much whenever we were going through the initial stages of development before there was an actual product that we could get on ourselves on the computer, we'd be invited along to EBS's offices, and they'd give us a demonstration of where they were at while it was in development mode. So yeah, that was actually really handy that we could just pop along and have a chat.
What were the biggest challenges from your perspective? And then maybe Simon, you can give us a sense of what were the technical challenges.
So because we're dealing with a lot of vehicles that have been recovered by the police, for example, so they're sensitive, and we know there's a lot of sensitive data, so it was making sure for us that we got that confidence that was going along. And I think the biggest challenge really was getting it out of my head and into theirs, essentially, for them to then build on that and develop what we wanted and needed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd probably echo that. I think me making sure I understand what you wanted was the biggest challenge, and I think what we did to tackle that was, first of all, lots of discussions before any commitment. We spoke regularly, we spoke frequently. I then involved the right people, so certainly Chris, who's not here today, but had a lot of involvement. But I think what we also did was things like a wireframe. So essentially what we mean by that is it's not a delivered solution, a very, very low commitment from yourselves to say, right, let's put something together as a shell of how it's going to operate. What do you think that looks like? And that allowed us to almost as well make that wide budget a very narrow budget. So that's what we're going to deliver. We had to kind of commit to that at that point. And yeah, I think that kind of captures it really.
And so, Mark, what's the outcome for you? What's the status of it now? How's it performing? What's it enabled your business to do?
So we've pretty much got a finished product now. We have been discussing a few little minor changes. Version 1, yeah. So version 1 we've got. That's enabled us to go out and demonstrate it to insurance companies, to fleet companies. We've just partnered with one of the country's biggest evolving breakdown and vehicle service companies. So yeah, it's helping us to sort of move forward now. So yeah, it's great.
Any special mention to anyone on the EBS team you want to give?
Yeah, just one. That'll be. Doesn't have to be. It's definitely not you, Chris. No, Chris at EBS was absolutely fantastic. Yeah, anytime I had any sort of issues, thoughts, even if they were absolutely just off my mind, get them off and send them off to him, and he would deal with them and come back to me. And yeah, he was fantastic. But I would echo that as well. Simon was good too, I guess.
Excellent. And so either Simon can answer this. So if anyone's thinking of, I've got an idea, I want to see it put into action, but I don't know exactly how to achieve that, what would be your recommendation apart from giving you a call? What's the process? What do you want them to do?
So I think just awareness of what could be done, whether that be far left field out there ideas, but if there's a problem that you're struggling with, if there's a gap that you can't fill with off-the-shelf software or anything in between, if there's processes that are painful, just have the conversation. There's probably something that could be done. Whether you do that or not is entirely up to you, but it's just the awareness of what could be done. And I think a lot of people just put up with pain because it's the way that it's always been done. Have the conversation, be aware of what is possible, and then you can make a more informed decision, I think. But yeah, I'd just like to echo Mark and Simon's about Chris and the development team. They've been brilliant with the whole project start to finish, and I think it went really well.
Great stuff. Thank you all very much.
All development can be hosted on EBS Cloud.
I mean, that sort of goes without saying, right? Okay. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for our wonderful panellists.